The incidence of my arrival has been talked about in a lot of different places, and with a few pieces of information lean to the left or the right. And I normally don't do a lot of speaking about that. I did years ago, but I've decided, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years ago, just to stop talking about it because there's a message that I feel is important for people to hear, but the message of my arrival here is not part of that highly important aspect. Where a person is from is not as important as where they are and their framework of being, who they are, who they help, and the things they do. It doesn't matter where you're from, you can do great things. And I decided about 5 years ago to bring this to the public arena at the advice of several psychics. And this is after many, many years of working with people who were desperately ill. Not all of them, of course. There were some folks who had a little of this or a little of that, but it wasn't that traumatic for them. But there were those desperately ill folks as well. And incredible things happened. There's been, I don't know, 11 or 12 years of Fox TV specials about me. And there's a book, and there's magazine articles, and, you know, all this Yahoo stuff. So I had a background where people could take a look at me and say, oh, well, you've done these things, and it's documented. Scientists have been looking at you. You work with doctors. You've gone into surgery. You've been tested, and everything comes up. They can't explain how it is that you can do the things you do. How do you do it? And I just say, well, you know, I don't know what God is, but whatever God is, God has a hand in all this. So the psychics all agreed that you should tell people who you are and where you're from. So after a bit of deliberation, we hooked up our broadcast system and we broadcast to the entire world. I don't know how many countries, but quite a few. It was close to 100 that tuned in that night. A 3-hour broadcast where I gave an entire dissertation of my origins and why I was here and all the details. And then I promptly took it offline. It was a one-time only shot. Because the message that I have for people is much more important than who I am or where I might be from. I don't have a need to prove it, and I don't have any reason to try and illustrate the details of all this. But the message is the important aspect, and the message has to do with who you are, not so much who I am. And in this, my first presentation here at Star Knowledge, the subject that I'm going to approach today has to do with a portion of the reason why you're here and a great deal about who you are specifically, not as a group, but as a person, and how that is interconnected into so many things that helps to define who you are. Because you see, one of the things that I've discovered in all of the people I've worked with and all the places that I've gone throughout the world with my wife Kathy is that human potential is infinite. The only mitigating factor is your imagination and your willingness to take a step forward into some area that you're unfamiliar with. We've gone into quite a few places that required more than one step to go into the area behind that black curtain. Today, with this simple explanation in my lecture here, I want to help you understand your connectivity to the universe and also to one another. Now, the pulse of the universe, I think it's important to take a step back away from everything that we know about how the universe is constructed, because we're told that the universe is a great vast vacuum, that there are particles out there, atomic and subatomic, that there are great objects, huge massive stars, small and large planets, debris, atoms, all kinds of stuff out there in the universe. And it's a very big place. But what I would like for you to maybe consider differently is what that dynamic is and how it isn't accurate. Everyone accepts as a matter of science that these are known and given facts. And yeah, there are stars and black holes and quasars and galaxies and debris and large and small planets and so on and so forth, but how did they come into existence? The fabric of the universe is a fabric that is woven with rivers of energy that flow from one point to another in great and unknown vast quantities in an endless stream that eventually, I'm thinking, folds back upon itself and continues to flow endlessly into infinity. This fabric of energy, when it crosses another stream, when it merges to another, and another riplet merges to another, it's in this action that tremendous amounts of energy are released. When this energy is released, there are things that happen, and they happen at a subatomic level, where atoms begin to coalesce and matter begins to form. Further and further down this line, in this evolutionary stage of matter begetting matter, you end up with stars and planets and debris and galaxies and so forth. How this energy works is really quite obvious. It is the path of least resistance. In the greater scheme of things, if we take ourselves away from the physical properties of the universe, we end up with a split between two halves. One half is matter and the other half is then spirit. But let's define spirit, because it's in this definition that you're going to understand the matter part of things. Spirit is when you have awareness. People talk about consciousness and awareness, and it's almost as though they are two homogeneous things. They are not. A good example of this would be what you see on the screen here. There is a projector, and it's projecting something on the screen. Think of that light and those images as consciousness. We can turn the brightness up, and it becomes brighter. We can move it back to the room, it becomes much larger. It is still present, and it's still obvious, but it's consciousness. It does not mean anything until you attach awareness to it. And at that point, understanding begins to unfold. Does everyone understand that so far? So when you have consciousness and awareness, and in this great interplay of energy in the universe, what you have here on this one half of the equation, where you have the spiritual side of the equation, you have a universe that even at its simplest point, down to the atom, and the atoms are colliding with others, that there is a self-awareness, and it might not be where we can pick up a book and read it. The awareness is not at that level, but it is an awareness that allows the atom to join with another and another to become plutonium or helium or lead or gold. And this joining together, because of energy, allows the universe to become formed. the pulse of the universe flows within you, because every atom that's in you originated somewhere else in the universe. It didn't just happen to migrate from some distant star that exploded several millions of years ago, and suddenly an atom happened to jump into your body. Instead, it was an awareness. Everything joined together to form a cell. So we take this a step farther, and we take a look at the sperm and the ovum. Both of these are two separate things. Each of these has awareness, not just consciousness. There's consciousness there as well. But that awareness, when they join together, this is where it really begins to impact you as individuals, because that means you are then creating a new life. That awareness suddenly splits the cell, and it becomes two, and both of those cells are now equally aware. It continues to divide and to divide. 9 months later, a baby is born, comprised of trillions of cells, and each are self-aware. But like you here on Earth, or the people who are in the stars, who migrate with other worlds out there, you have an opportunity with your trillions of cells in your body that are each completely self-aware to be close to another person. And that other person who is also self-aware with the cells in their body. You can become even more greatly aware. And the more people you join together with, it becomes much, much greater than the sum of people that are involved. Because this level of awareness becomes powerful, and it becomes a dynamic force that allows even greater things to happen. The stars that are pulsing with life, whether they are near or far, are pulsing with life from an energy, from a river of energy, and streams and threads of energy that are flowing through the universe. You hold out your hands and stand in any space. One of those tiny fibers of energy, or perhaps an entire river of energy, can be running through you, connecting to a distant star, and on its way through a whole multitude of people, animals and plants, between you and its ultimate destination, where it bends and takes a left and goes on to the next rivulet of energy. This pulse runs through you. For the people who wonder how it is that I can work on someone who has something tremendously disabling within their physical condition, I have come about with an explanation that it's God, that it is the presence of the divine. Depending upon the person, the answer suits their intellectual need to have an understanding. It fits a belief system because it isn't any one particular belief system that really can be incorporated to explain this. But this is how it works. This energy is endless. It comes from a source that is far greater than any of us could ever use in 1,000 lifetimes. It has no intelligence. It has no direction. It doesn't care if it goes left, right, up, down, or center. It is the spark of the divine within you that gives it a reason to move in a particular orientation. In this pulse of the universe, this degree of incredible awareness that each of our cells have, and together they form us who can become incredibly aware, we touch the divine. And in touching the divine, we see ourselves as though we were looking into a still pool. Because it's at that point that we could realize that the divine that we're seeking out here, either in a sacred place or somewhere out among the stars, is more profoundly and easily accessed if we touch within ourselves first. And the things that we touch then become divine because we have used our awareness and our consciousness and put the energy in a direction that allows for these great works to have occurred. Whether it's healing or in a drum circle to bring the energy, to heal the earth or to heal each other. When we reflect on the idea that we have a spark of the divine within us and that the reason we look like we do, perhaps it's as it's mentioned in some of the more sacred texts, that we are the image of God. We are in the image of God. We are the image of God. And in that reflection, when we look into the still pool, we then begin to understand that the person who's near us is also an image of God. And the pulse that is within the universe, that is running through us, and our life is being pulled together, and the energy that gives us this animated flesh, that this pulse and this energy in the universe, in its ultimate state, is an expression of what we might imagine God to be. And if we look around, then we can find God everywhere we go. So we look to the stars, and we want to know, are there people there? Are there others like ourselves? Do they think like we do? No, they don't. Not entirely. Do they have hopes and dreams? Yes, they do. Do they recognize that there is some aspect of what we consider divine? And they recognize this. And they recognize it in a more profound way than we have incorporated here. But from what I've seen of the drum circles, the camaraderie between the folks who are here, all these things condensed down to a word called love, respect, compassion, understanding. You're beginning to exemplify that new standard of understanding of what the divine within yourself is all about. And as we take a look backward, and we understand more and more of the ancient ways, how the Native Americans carried traditions and ideals and passed them on generation to generation. The pulse of the universe was within them as well. And I think that if they had been left unabated and not interfered with, the world would be a much different place. We would have ancient knowledge and ancient tradition that we could pull from, that we today would probably be benefiting from this to the point to where we would understand we are a part of the universe, we're a part of the greater cosmos, and that this pulse that we hear when the drum is beating, when we can feel our heartbeat or the heartbeat of another, when we listen to the distant thunder, this pulse is part of who we are as well. And this joining together between us and it is what gives us definition and allows for greater creativity to occur. I know some of you are curious, and you're probably wondering a great number of things. What message would I bring? What thing would I say if given the microphone and a stand to address the world? The most appropriate and simplest thing that I can conceive of would be kind to each other. Until you can do that, you haven't really lived. Because it's at that point you certainly define yourself much more differently than you have in the past. Unless, of course, you've already experienced that. And then you know what I'm talking about. So, are there any questions? Yes, Jean. Well, you can talk to Kathy. Kathy is the person who keeps track of time. I have an issue with time. If it wasn't for having a clock, I wouldn't know where I'm at, even what day it is. But you can, if you wanted to schedule yourself for a healing, then you can certainly talk to Kathy. Kathy is my hero. She's in the back of the room. And she will certainly fill you in on any details that you might need to know. Certainly. Did you hear the question? Jean was asking if I could relate where my point of origin is, anything about my ancestry. So I'll tell you a little story. Doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's my understanding. Yes. There is, or was, a small abandoned farmhouse back in the hills of Kentucky. It was, I don't know where it was, except that it was somewhere in the vicinity of Fort Knox. That's all I know about it. One night, I was brought there as an infant, and I don't know, basket, carrier, something. I don't know what it was. I was an infant. And I was left there. And several hours later, there were military trucks and military personnel from the Army Air Corps, there was no Air Force at the time, who came there and retrieved me and took me back to Fort Knox. Once back at Fort Knox, that's where I was kept for a period of time, and as mentioned, I couldn't tell you how long it was. I was an infant. Eventually, there was a husband and wife. He was in the Army, and I don't know what his position was. I've never been able to find this out. But he was in the Army, and he and his wife adopted me. I've seen the birth certificate, and for many years the birth certificate I thought was legitimate and was just fine. It says that I was born on September 11th of 1953. However, that isn't accurate, and I don't know what my birthday is, or even what year, honestly. It would be many years, well, it would be a few years later that I would eventually be taken to Florida between the ages of, Well, I remember it starting about 5, and by the time I was 7, well, my father passed away. But I remember going to Florida and being taken out into the swamps in an airboat and dropped off at a facility that was just in the middle of nowhere by my father and my uncle. I was told his name was Sam. I know, it sounds wacky, doesn't it? What would happen there, I haven't a clue. Because after I'd arrived, I was given a stick of juicy fruit gum, and I immediately lost consciousness. And I would wake up back at the hotel room. Oh, we're going to go to the beach today. Let's go have pancakes. And it's like, I don't know what happened. Okay, let's go have fun. How many years that went on? I have no idea. There was a point before my father died, and I was 6 years old, that there were these people that wanted me to show up at some great hall, about twice the size of this, down in a basement in Denver, Colorado, which is where we were living at the time. I was made to dress in a one-piece garment with a little symbol here of some sort. I don't recall what it was. And I had to recite these words to a microphone to a room full of people who were all in the dark. There was only a light here on me. And I would say these words, everyone would cheer, I'd go off the stage. I don't know what that was all about, but I do know my father was a Mason. So I suspect it had something to do with that. It would be probably another 5 years after he passed away that something unique and intriguing occurred. I was in a field late in the evening at dusk, and this huge ship came across the top of the trees and parked. And whatever was there and whoever was in it spoke to me and said something to the equivalency that, it's good to see you, we'll be back. And then it left. I was 12 years old. It would be another year, and I would eventually have face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials on an ongoing basis for the next 4.5 years. It would occur at least once a week. During that time, there were a great many things that we discussed, that was shown to me, and things that occurred that were very confusing, because these people seemed to know what the future was, and that there was something very significant about my birthday. And I had no idea what any of this was, but some of the pictures they showed me were not very pleasant, and I chose to not remember them. Fast forward a little bit further in time, many things took place. During this entire duration of my childhood, I knew things before anyone else did. I was psychic. But then, and in that location, there was no vocabulary to completely explain or adequately address what was happening for me. But I would know who was going to win the Kentucky Derby. My uncle liked that. I knew who was going to win a particular football game if they asked me. I also knew when someone had breast cancer. I knew when someone had something wrong with them, and they didn't like that. And when someone would die, then I would see them on the other side, and I'd try to provide messages from my Aunt Betty, or whoever it might be, because she was just imploring me, please tell my husband this, tell my children this. And it was going on and on with so many different people around me. I would find that if I put my hands on a person, I could see inside of them. Transparent. You've heard of people who are psychic, that can do psychometry, and they hold something, and they know the story. Well, imagine putting your hand on a cow and looking inside the cow. That's what I was doing. Or the dog. Or the fellow that hurt his knee coming off the tractor. And when I felt really sad for him that he couldn't walk 3/4 of a mile home across a freshly plowed field because his leg hurt so bad, I decided I would just fix it. And I did. At 14 or 15 years old. And it scared him and the other folks in the community, and I was compelled to shut the hell up and don't talk about this again. It would be my life story at that point. I couldn't talk about the UFOs. I couldn't talk about the messages. I couldn't talk about what was going to happen. And I couldn't do anything but help animals. I could see the field of energy around plants and animals and people. I see the energy around all of you right now. Tomorrow I'm going to show you how to do that. I built something. I'm an electronics engineer. I built a way to show you this, so if you want to see it, show up. It would be from my late teen years, 18, 19, until I was 43 or 44 years old, that I would shut the hell up. Be quiet. Don't talk about it. You're going to make a fool of yourself. You're going to hurt your business. You're going to do this, that, or the other. We don't want to hear about it. It's just not the sort of thing we want to even know about. And I felt that it was time to be me. I felt it was necessary to be who I am. And that incorporated the entire repertoire. I'm not from this world. I never have been. That was the first step that I had to take, accepting that about myself and saying, yeah, well, if they don't like it, so what? The second thing that I had to do is try to help people who were hurt, to do something that would help them. And I found that it was a very difficult thing to do at first because I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to be public about it. Until Kathy. She pointed out that there was a very unique opportunity for me to help others, to do something good in the world. She'd seen evidence of what I do, and she was the reason that I had the courage and the strength to take that next step. And so I did. She held my hand through it. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be standing here today talking to you. That's how profound her influence was on me. And since that time, I've been all over the world helping people and looking for lost cities, exploring the unknown, and bringing information forward as best I can. So where am I from? It's a little star, not too far from here. The star is called Tau Ceti. There is a series of planets revolving around this star, as there are among a lot of stars. It's a beautiful little world, a bit more ocean than you have here. The colors are a little bit more vivid because the color of the star is a little bit different. Let's take a bit of an idea from Star Wars. It's the Force. And how you use it is totally dependent on you. There are plenty of really not so good people out there in the world who know how to use this energy quite well, and they've been using it on the masses for a very long time. And they discover new and unique ways to influence the way you think, your desires, and compound your fears. Using this energy in a dark way is completely possible, and it's permitted. Because in this realm of the universe, this dimension, however you want to characterize it, it's a place of free will. That's why I decided to teach people how to do this, because there needs to be, I think, and the people that I call my family, those who live out there among the stars, it is a common belief that human potential is infinite and that the greatest good is yet to be experienced, that something wonderful can take place, because humankind, by and large, are very kind, loving people who really don't know yet the true nature of their existence and don't yet know what they're capable of doing towards the betterment of the entire planet. Now, there are elements who do. I think you probably represent part of that element, and many of you who are here do as well. But by and large, the world is asleep. There are so many who are. So, having the ability, or let's say ability, the opportunity to see how this is done, doesn't mean that there's less evil in the world. It just means that now there is one step off to this side where that evil can be negated a little bit more efficiently, with greater efficacy. It's a power struggle. That's what this realm is all about. It's a power struggle. And it's really the people that we don't agree with versus us. The people who think that this is goofy versus us. The people who are gifted against the people who aren't. As Dr. Robert Melamede was saying on my radio show a few weeks ago, those who are cannabinoid deficient against those who have a good supply. So, yeah, you can certainly see evidence for the evil in the world, but I think that we can, instead of looking for the light, trying to find the light, we want to find the light because we want to be like the light. We hear that a lot. I do. No, it's not like that. You are the light. It's time to stop looking for it. You found it. Feel around. Oh, here it is. It was right there all along, and I was looking over there for it. Anyone else? Yes. What do I mean, you are the light? Well, let's think about it this way. Here's an intellectual pursuit. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that you went looking for God, and you looked everywhere, couldn't find God, and so you went looking inside, and you discovered, which you would, that you and God are homogeneous. You can't tell where God ends and you begin, right? That's where my philosophy is at. God lives here. And, of course, within each of you. It isn't just here, but within each person. Now, we want to be the type of person that does a good thing for others, right? We're looking to improve ourselves and to help the world. And when we're doing that, part of what we're doing is we're aspiring to be like the light. When we die, we're going to go to the light. And everywhere in between, we're wanting to be like the light of God, right? But if God lives here, where does that light come from? If not here first. if we understand that we are actually the source of the light, and it comes radiating out from us, then we can stop looking for it, because now it's here. And if we get comfortable with that idea, and we allow it to just shine, you've heard people say, let your light shine. If you just let it shine, think of the lives that it changes just by your presence. And suddenly another godlike aspect is available to you, because now your presence is like the divine on the earth, letting your light shine and being part of the process of creation and not at the whims of it. And your light shining bright doesn't make you special, because you're not looking at it. That's the reason why most people don't notice it. Instead, you're an icon. You are what other people are looking at and saying, oh, his light is shining so bright. I wish my light was shining that bright. And just by your presence, you can show them how it's done, by just being you. Not being what other people expect of you, not being the image that someone places upon you, but just being you. And at that point, you've changed the world around you in very small ways that ripple outward with a force that's quite powerful. And you've influenced the pulse that moves through the universe, because you're no longer living in some delusion or living your life as though you're trying to be something for someone and not quite sure if you ever match their expectations. You live to exist because you live to exist. And your light shines very brightly, and it shows everyone else how it's done. Does that help? Good. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Well, you know something, I have seen good people and bad. I've had some very terrible people with guns and evil intentions who have approached us in remote parts of the world. Their light is very bright as well. It is intention that causes the energy to take a direction. You can have a very bright light and be evil. I could name off several who fall into that category. It's very easy to believe a person who is evil, who has a bright light. That's why yours needs to be bright too. Cast two shadows. All right, we're coming up to the close of this. What I want to leave you with, among the other things that I've told you, is if you understand the true nature of your existence, you will find that you're not just special, but you're actually quite divine. With all of your flaws, the ones you see, with all of the problems, the ones you know you have, you're not up here, you're down there, or somewhere in between. But I would like to invite you to just take a moment, look in a mirror. I would like for you to try and see yourselves the way that I see you. One more image of God, perfect and whole. Just try. And if you can, then look across to the other people and try to see that as well. One person by one person, we can find the divine within ourselves by finding it in others as well, and in all things in creation. Thank you for your kind attention and your patience. I really appreciate it.